Hello everybody, my name is Clive
And I'm David Reed.
and you're watching
From the bench.
So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to episode number 4, I believe this is, David.
Yes, it
How
is.
are you, mate?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, mate. Now, obviously everyone's heard the news. If you were living under a rock, you wouldn't know, but Mike Ashley's left the building and some Saudi owners are coming with £300 billion. David, what can you tell me about the Newcastle United takeover?
What I watched from Sky Sports last night is that the Premier League gave a stamp on it so it could go ahead, because that's one thing. They announced the takeover in a few hours, but it wouldn't go through until the Premier League gave a stamp that it would actually go through. And the Premier League gave the appeal, like you said, it could come through. But the rules were that the Saudi owners had no right in the club, so they couldn't spend money, but owning the investment group, the Saudi group, and the people who are owning that have full control of the club, so that's 80%, I think it is. And the Saudi owners only own 20% of the club will do. And what I also said is, she's been like watching Newcastle and what the needs is, and it's just come about as because finally that right groups have said they can go ahead with it. It's also been said that the Premier League agrees with the deal now, and even the owners have agreed to all the terms and conditions, which is important from how, what the word is, difficult the situation is at the moment with the person in Saudi Arabia who's owning the club, all the controversy that's happening, but it's all gone ahead now and it looks really good now.
Yeah, and I think it's certainly interesting, isn't it? Obviously, this is something that's been going on for what was it, the last 2 seasons now. They've been on and off, hasn't it? This whole Saudi business with Newcastle United, and what a time for it to come. Obviously, they're near rock bottom of the league. Obviously, we're holding the table up, but if it weren't for that, then it would have probably been them in a couple of weeks. What do you think this is doing for football, David? Because for me, it's just football is becoming such a business rather than a sport now, and it's not upsetting to see. But when you support one of the little clubs, you sort of realise, like, it sort of takes away the magic of what football really is, doesn't it? Because obviously, all of a sudden, you know you're going to be getting these good players, Mbappe, Neymar, and Haaland, or these sort of players, and obviously they're really good quality players, and they're not good because how much they cost. They're good because of how hard they've worked. But then it's the teams, and they bring in these players for God knows how much money. Norwich spent £50 million this season, so, and that's high price for us, because Delia Smith, she's only worth what, £30 million.
Yeah.
And you bring in these Saudi owners who are all of a sudden worth, what is it, 350 billion, I think it was, and when the Manchester City one's worth 30 billion, then you really get a scale of how big this really is. But what do you think, David? Are you concerned that football is just really is starting to become more of a business than sport?
Well, what you can say about that is, it's spoiling. It's not just the club. It's not £300 on players. You got to think about it's costing for staff, for new coaches, it's also for new facilities, it's also for areas of places like Newcastle as well, it's also for clubs, like local clubs as well, it's infrastructure as well. That costs a lot of money. You can't go in there with a mentality, a business is business it is, and you've got to understand that you buy a football club, and you're not buying players, you're not buying like say Newcastle, you're buying the area of Newcastle where you've got money now, you can improve them, you can give kids a chance week in week out to play football now, and that's the difference in football. And the reason it's more expensive because more people are getting better now, coaches are getting better, facilities are getting better now, even balls are getting better now, and that is what you're buying for. You're buying the quality. Back in the old days, it was players were still good, don't get me wrong, but the quality of good players wasn't there. Nowadays, you look at every country now, and you can name about 20 good players from there alone, off the top of your head. And there's a lot more coming now, and that's the thing. That's why the money needs to be there for young. Because it's okay saying it's a money sport now, but if you don't have the money, where do these players go exactly? Do they stay in their home country? Like you say about the Dutch league. Do you want to stay like Ajax, finals, all your career, or do you want to move somewhere where you get money? You've got better fans, you get a chance to show how good you are, and that's what you've got to compete with now. Like players have desire, you want to work well, you want to do well in football, you do anything you want, you'll go to any team, and that is why, like the Man City owners, the Chelsea owners, that's why they give lifelines to players who themselves, like football, you look at billionaires, they can buy expensive cars, Rolexes, stuff like that, but nobody cares about that. But as soon as they buy a football club, it's, oh yeah, it's money, we're buying players. There's no difference between owning, like, say, Mbappe to owning a Ferrari, really, because you own stuff that you care for, really.
It's right when you put it into hindsight like that, and you like obviously players are becoming like, yeah, it's like so a billionaire owning a football club and owning a player like Mbappe is like a millionaire owning a Ferrari in a big house. So I guess I get what you're saying.
You've got to spend the money how they want to spend the money. It's like saying you can only spend money on this, that, and the other, but you can't spend on this. You'd be ridiculed for that. So how would you react if someone said, you can only buy this and this and the other week? How would you react to that?
Yeah, obviously you wouldn't be happy. So you want to be able to spend your money how you want it. But do you get what I mean? Though when I say football's becoming more of a business, it is obviously there's a lot more money in the sport now. And you're right in the fact, like even from the smallest technologies like the footballs themselves have got a lot smarter. Like they've got all these little grooves and it supposedly moves the ball through the air. How true that is, I'm not too sure. But I mean, Nike seem to think they're making the best footballs going at the moment. Obviously, Puma now make their footballs for the championship in the EFL, don't they? So
it's personal.
It's just carry on.
It's over. But I get the you know how the money's split up is so poor. They said, do you know how much money the EFL gets? Compared, it's split like 300 million, I think it is. How much do you think all League One, League Two, and Championship gets out of that 300?
I reckon the Championship probably gets like 200, and then the League One, and League Two get.
I think it's only about 50 does. The rest goes to the Premier League. It does, and the problem,
really?
Yes, it's so minute. By the time it gets down to League Two, there's barely any money there is, and that's why you see
it filters down, doesn't it? And coming to that, do you think the big clubs should do? I mean, it's not really. They don't have to, but do you think it should almost be their right to help out these smaller clubs, teams like Bury, teams like Bolton, teams that were this like, obviously we lost Bury, but teams like Bolton that were this close to going down, going extinct. Do you think bigger clubs, now that there is so much money in the sport, like even like Newcastle now, do you think big clubs should do more to help these little clubs? Does that make sense? I mean, obviously, as I said before, it's not their duty to do that because they've got nothing to do with these other clubs. But do you think personally, like, these bigger clubs should step in when a small club looks like it's almost dead and buried?
Well, you can say, when you look to the EFL, went to the Premier League to get some money, and it took them almost, I think it was 2 years just to get the money. And the money they got wasn't even what they're after was. And you think how expensive the Premier League is? Barely any of the Premier League teams wanted to give money to the EFL. And the problem is, if you get rid of the EFL, like if the League Championship goes, what is the point of the Premier League? Like, Norwich should come 20th every season from now on. You're not going to get relegated, and you're still going to get money from that. And that's the problem. When you look at teams like Lincoln, over the pandemic, we nearly lost Lincoln. If it wasn't for our investment group punting a lot of money into there, we would have lost Lincoln. We look at stadium costs now. Most of the stadiums, if you look at when you watch Quest on Saturdays, you look at the stadium, most stadiums are standing stadiums still. We live in a world where there's still standing stadiums, which is not allowed. When you look at, I can't remember the team.
Well, they're saying they want standing stadiums back in the Premier League, aren't they?
Which is stupid, really.
I mean, I saw an article the other day. They were like, Carrow Road wants to have, they want to have a safe standing area in Carrow Road. But I get what you're saying. Norwich finish 20th every season. They still get money to stay in the Premier League. How boring would that be for us Norwich fans? There wouldn't be any improvement. Like, yes, getting relegated from the Premier League is a horrible experience. I hate it every time it happens, and being an Norwich fan, I've experienced it enough. But then that joy of winning the championship, it's just brings the fans back up. Do you know what I mean? Whereas, how quickly would the fans turn if there wasn't a relegation, and all of a sudden you weren't able to come back up, you weren't able to win a trophy, and you weren't able to progress back to where you were? It's like the Super League. How stupid was that? All of these big clubs wanted to split off, Tottenham and Arsenal included, which at the time, how they had the audacity to include themselves in that, I'll never know. But like, it'd have been a case of Arsenal finishing last every time, and they can't get relegated back to the Premier League because it was a completely separate thing. They'd have all been kicked out of the Premier League. So, and that's another thing. Just money is driving this sport at the moment, and it's not what it used to be. Like, obviously having all this money in the sport is good, and like you said, it's good for the infrastructure. I'm sure a lot of that money that Newcastle now have will go into the training ground. It will go into the stadium. It'll go into the youth grounds and things like that. It will probably go into some of it will probably go into the local community as well, and
that's
good.
Man City, you talk about it.
But it's like us. It's like Norwich with the Aviva Community Sports Foundation, even though I don't think it's called Aviva anymore. The Community Sports Foundation, like Norwich do that's for the local community. They do that for everyone. That they've obviously got the Nest, which they recently invested in. And I'm pretty sure they've got plans for Colney as well, or the Lotus Training Centre, which they call it now. And there's plans for that. They've just brought in this new bit of technology which is going to help the players' awareness, and it's the only one in the country. So I guess
you got to pay for that as well.
For Norwich, that's something to be proud of. But and like you said with shirt sales and things like that, a lot. Football is such a money-driven sport now; it's ridiculous. But on the flip side, it is also helpful.
But most teams aren't owned by anything; they're owned by investment groups. And if you don't give them money, what's coming to them then? You can't get an investment group to keep funding a football team for the near future. That's the thing.
That's the thing. Norwich aren't. Norwich are owned by.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what Norwich are one of the only. I think they're the only self-funding football club in the top two. No, there probably is a couple in the champion, but they're definitely the only self-funding football club in the Premier League.
And that's the problem. Like, I would love Lincoln being a Premier League. The problem is, if you go into a Premier League with an investment group who don't have much money, it's going to be pointless seeing Lincoln getting battered week in week. I love Lincoln, and I love what Clive has done. He's done an absolutely amazing job with Lincoln, but we haven't got the financial power we haven't anymore like we used to. Like back in the old days, we used to be so good. We used to have like money. We used to be so good, and we lost it. When you look at teams like Stevenage, Bolton, when you see where they are now. And now
look how big Bolton were at one point as well.
Yeah,
they were challenging for Europe, weren't they, at some stage?
Even Portsmouth, I look at them, and it's such a shame now. Even look at the Papa John's trophy. It's called the Papa John's Trophy now. We can talk about that in trophy.
It's like a joke now, isn't it? Really, you get these little you got the Checker Trade Trophy.
I think the Papa John's.
That's what I mean. It's all to do with sponsors, and you get these stadium names now. Like we're quite fortunate in Norwich. Ours is called Carrow Road.
Yeah,
and it will always stay as Carrow Road because the fans. If they changed it to like the Lotus Stadium, Norwich City fans, we would absolutely kick off.
Yeah,
but it's like Bolton. What was their stadium called before? I can't. The University of Bolton Stadium now. It's called the Macron Stadium, isn't it?
Lincoln's is named the L&R Stadium. I've got a load of pictures of trains on.
You got locomotives on your football stadium.
I was wondering who sanctioned the L&R? Who gave the rights to the stadium name? Like, it's Central Bank has been our name forever. It has, and you can't change the stadium name because of money. The stadium name should always say what it is. You can't decide like, hang on, we need some money. And who's the biggest investment? Stick it in and say you can't name it. We're supposed to name the toilets now, men's and women's. The Macron men's toilets. You can't name it like that. You can't. And that's the problem.
Not everyone's going to agree with us, though, because a lot of people are going to think, money in sport is good and it's important.
It is good in the right areas.
But that's what I mean. When it gets used too much to the extent of this, like this Newcastle takeover. When teams have this much money, the teams that come up from the Championship, how are they expected to have a chance? Like Norwich, when you get a small team who comes up, their owner is worth £30 million and she's an out-of-date cook. How does anyone have any expectation? Yes, we spent £50 million this season, but we didn't spend £50 million on £50 million players, which is what other teams do. Norwich spent £50 million on 6 different players. And that's what I mean, they're all £10 million players they're who have either failed at their previous club or we got them on the cheap because they got relegated. Milot Rashica was worth £25 million last season. And I'm pretty sure if we didn't sell Buendia, Aston Villa would have probably got him because they asked. What was it? I'm pretty sure they tried to pay £25 million for Milot Rashica last season. I might have got that wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's a fact. And now, obviously, Norwich wouldn't have picked him up for £9.5 million, which you could say is a bit of a steal. But obviously, that's only because he got relegated with Werder Bremen last season. So it's going to be interesting to see if Norwich can compete this season with the piles of cash that is the Premier League, and that's what it is now, isn't it? It is the piles of cash.
It's not that just that, really, is it? When you look at it, should be coaches as well. Coaches should. It's not just money. You can't stick 11 players on the pitch. When you look at Lampard with Chelsea, it really failed. A coach
Well, yeah, it is to do with the coach as well, and you have to.
When you look at
ask
Pirlo, he wasn't a great man, but where he came from, the academy he came from, what the country should be doing is investing in English coaches. It should be like having a big centre like Italy has, where coaches can go and become.
I don't know why we don't. I don't know.
No, you think I'd win the Premier League? If you put, I don't know, half.
How many Premier League managers now are English?
Sean Dyche, Graham Potter. I think it's about. Who else we got? Do you count UK? Because you count David Moyes because he's Scottish.
Well, yeah. But do you like? There's not enough like. I love having like Jurgen Klopp and Daniel Farke,
Pep Guardiola.
They are absolutely incredible, such brilliant personalities. But like you said, there's not a coaching centre for English coaches here anymore, and that's why I think like young teams are struggling like lower down because they've got these inexperienced English coaches who don't know what they're doing.
They've got nowhere to go. Like we saw Graham Potter on Soccer saying he had to go. He was in bottom tier of National League. He was, and he'd go to Sweden to find coaching job, and that shouldn't be a thing. You think how many teams are in England who need managers? I think how big.
In the 92 teams that are in the Football League, let alone National League and the leagues.
Yeah, it's about over 200 and plus teams there is, and you say you can't get a job with one of those, and you can't do work experience there. And how is it not a coaching centre or the FA not saying we need to do this thing about it? Because it's a growing problem. When you look at England managers, can you name 6 England candidates for the England manager job who could actually do a decent job and prove what Southgate's done?
Probably not.
Exactly. But can you name Spain though, or Germany?
Well, yeah, of course you give them their hatfuls.
Yeah.
Because they've got the coaching centres that we don't have here. And this is nothing against I love all the different coaches we have here in the country. I love every single one.
We've got some great ones, we do.
I think the Premier League managers are absolutely brilliant. They've all got such personalities. You love seeing them in interviews, especially. I think Jurgen Klopp's probably one of my favourite managers in the league. He's brilliant,
and Sean Dyche's voice.
I get what you're saying, but I'm sure we'll have another episode where we can talk more about coaches and things. But what do you lot think in the comments down below? I want you to let us know what you think to this whole Newcastle takeover and is football becoming just a business rather than a sport? Let us know in the comments down below.
And also let us know what other teams you think could do the financial takeovers, or not like a massive like Newcastle one, but a small like Derby could do as one, Lincoln, teams like that. So leave that down in the comments and we'll reply to some on the next video. At the end of the next video we should do.
Yeah, we'll have a little section just for the comments, but we also want you to let us know what's going to happen with Brucey. Is he going to get the sack?
Like how he's thrown in his face again?
Or are they going to keep him on? Or is he going to be able to outpace St. Maximin on FIFA like he has been previously? Anyway guys, hopefully you've enjoyed this podcast. You've been watching
From the Bench.